Wish I could read books in their original language. I once met a woman who could speak 12 different languages. I'm not even joking. She spoke German, she spoke Japanese, she spoke Italian, she spoke French, she spoke Spanish, she spoke even, yeah, did I say Japanese? Man, I was jealous. But I would definitely, I'm saying I would definitely recommend it after every single book that I talk to you about. So it's a little repetitive. Who is Elena Ferrante? Yeah, not many facts are known about her due to her anonymity. We don't actually know who she is. Who is she? I have to go watch Monica's video now. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. I'm here with a video that was voted on. So I was just having some trouble deciding what I wanted to film first. I had some ideas, and as a community you all came together and helped me decide, and I really appreciate that. There were 30 votes and 53% came in for, we have 53% for recommendations of what to read for Women in Translation Month. And the runner-up was Best and Worst Books of the Year so far, which I haven't really prepared anything for that video, but I may or I may not. And then a very small amount for a book haul. So it's always interesting to see what people want to have presented to them. Here I am with book recommendations for Women in Translation Month. I went back through my shelves and pulled like 8 to 10 books that I've read that I would recommend for Women in Translation Month. And I also pulled about 8 or 9 that I haven't read yet that I guess have become also my pile of possibilities. So the inspiration for this video was that I saw that Charlotte Malloy had posted a video like this recently, a couple days ago, I think, and I thought, oh yeah, that's a brilliant idea. She's brilliant. I'm sure most of you probably know her channel, but I will leave it linked in the description box below. And of the books that I'm going to talk about today, I think there's only one crossover, as well as one of the books in my pile of possibilities is actually a book that Charlotte recommended. So just shout out to Charlotte for the good idea, and I'll be looking forward to other booktubers' versions of this video. I hope it does the rounds. I don't mind if there's crossover though, like that's cool too. So yes, if you're looking for something to read, I realize that I do read quite a bit of women in translation in general, so I had quite a bit to choose from. So the first one I'm going to talk about was one of my favorite books that I read in 2021, which is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. A lot of people have talked about this book on BookTube and elsewhere, by Olga Tokarczuk. I also tried reading Flights, but I kind of abandoned Flights. Flights was a little bit harder because it didn't have a complete narrative. It wasn't a full and complete story. Drive Your Plow is a full and complete story about some mysterious deaths that occur in a small sort of cottage community in Warsaw, or near Warsaw, I think. No, it's not even. It's just a remote Polish village. And our main character is kind of a cranky older lady named Janina, who's a bit odd. And she starts noticing that people are disappearing, being disappeared, and the mystery is who is killing all of these people. And I guess at some point in the story, and I don't want to give too much away, I think we're supposed to maybe suspect her, or the police maybe suspect her. I don't know. I read it quite some time ago, but I remember loving this book, and I will leave a link to my original comments on the book for that 2021 best of video. But I really loved it. It has a mystical feel to it. I really enjoyed this one, and I would recommend it if you haven't read anything by Olga Tokarczuk yet. I have looked at the books of Jacob. I've picked up the books of Jacob in bookstores, and I've put it back down because it's intimidating to me. So if anybody's tackled the books of Jacob, do let me know. It's something I kind of thought about maybe picking up this year, but I don't think it's in my plans. So this is the second book, Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. This book I read last year and really enjoyed it as well. And in fact, I'm going to be talking about another one of her books as a possibility. She is a wonderful writer. There are scenes from this book that have stayed with me, that I haven't forgotten, that I remember immediately from having read this book. Very impactful scenes involving eggs, one of them. So it's an exploration. I mean, the title is Breasts and Eggs. It's an exploration of fertility. It's an exploration of women and the way that they're perceived in Japan and how they perceive themselves. And there's a lot of exploration of body image. But from a narrative point of view, it tells the story of three women. A woman and her daughter, Makiko, and the daughter, Midoriko, who's taken a vow of silence. That's really the first half of the book is about their story. And then the second half of the book is more about Natsuko, her sister, who is, I think, working in publishing and has more to do with her journey through fertility. So I don't want to give too much away, but I highly recommend this book. It was amazing. It was really, really, really good. I enjoyed it so, so much. The next one is a memoir, which I also read last year. Tove Ditlevsen's Childhood Youth Dependency. This book is also very beautifully written. I just fell in love with her writing, but it's a difficult book to read because it is ultimately the story of a woman who struggles with her life. So it's a trilogy of memoirs that looks at her young life and how she fell in love with books and reading and come up from poverty and into a life of being a writer, and then her experiences as an adult, and then her sad, it turns very dark. When in the chapter about dependency, it does turn very dark, so just a trigger warning there. But I was really moved by this book, and I really, really loved her writing. So if you haven't tried this one yet, or if you've thought about reading the Copenhagen trilogy, I would definitely recommend it as a potential choice for the month. One that I read a long time ago, so I'm not sure how much detail I could speak about it with. This is Muriel Barbary's The Elegance of the Hedgehog. I remember really enjoying this book when I read it. It's set in Paris, and it's, I think, a coming-of-age novel it's about Paloma, who's a 12-year-old girl who lives on the 5th floor of this kind of elegant hotel in Paris. And her relationship to the building's concierge, a woman named Renee. So an older woman and a young girl, and the sort of surprising relationship that blossoms between the two of them. I do remember really loving it. It's just one of those books, it's just a story about these odd characters coming together, and it's also a coming-of-age story about Paloma, and she discovers herself. I really enjoyed it at the time that I read it, and it might be time for a reread of this one. Next up is Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. I read this again. I think I read this in 2021, actually. A lot of people have probably already talked about this book, but I loved this book. It was so good. This is the story of Mieko. She is a very unusual person and takes great pride in her job at the convenience store. And it's a really good book. It's really interesting because Mieko has a lot of pressure on her from other people and society to do something else with her life, namely find a boyfriend and have a family. And it's just, she's a very quirky character, and it's a very good commentary on just being a woman and all of the pressures that go along and expectations that go along with being a young woman. And if you haven't read Convenience Store Woman, I think this might be your choice for the month. It's short and it's excellent. That's so good. So good. The Aosawa Murders by Riku Onda. I read this, I also think I read this in 2021, the year that I started my booktube channel. And I was totally intrigued by this because it's about the murder of 17 people at a party. They are all poisoned, and we don't know who poisoned them or what their motive was. And because it's written, it's like a Japanese mystery, and I think it's set in the 70s. Yeah, it's set in the 70s, and the Aosawas was a renowned family. Oh, and then the prime suspect, and I'm not ruining anything, but the prime suspect in the murders commits suicide. And it's a very interesting book because it's told through the lens of someone who's writing about the murders a lot later. So there's a second story happening between the writer and her assistant, and then there's a detective character that I really liked as well in the story. And it's got this very kind of, it's got this very, oh, I don't know, like virgin suicides, ethereal, kind of magical feeling to the writing. I don't know how else to describe it. It didn't work for me ultimately because I didn't like the ending, but I still think that it would appeal to a lot of people, and I'd be curious if it interests any of you all or if you've read it. So yeah, I think this would be a little bit more obscure, maybe a little bit lesser known. The next one I'm going to recommend is The Door by Magda Sabo. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I read this one a while ago too, but I remember really liking it. So it's set in Hungary sometime between the 1960s and 1980s, and it's about a woman who's a writer and her housekeeper and their relationship, but it's very moody and it's a little bit creepy. The writer is very eccentric. So the book starts out with, I killed Emerence, who's what's the name of the writer. And the chilling beginning to the story leads us to this telling of the relationship between these two characters and what led to that event. So yeah, I'm not giving anything away by saying that. It's really well done. So it's like they have like this mother-daughter relationship, but it's not a positive mother-daughter relationship, I must say. Emerence is very eccentric, and you almost get the sense that she's not really rational. She's not in her right mind sometimes. I would recommend The Door as well. And then I would be remiss to be talking about recommendations for women in translation if I didn't talk about Elena Ferrante. I don't think I need to really discuss too much Elena Ferrante's trilogy. I have the 3 books, but there's a 4th book, which I don't have and have not read because I read the first 3 and then I kind of lost motivation. And I've always meant to go back and reread or read it again, but I think I just moved on to other things after having read the first 3, and I read these before I started my booktube channel. I think my favorite, I'm not sure which is my favorite. It'd be hard to choose, but I think definitely starting with the first one, My Brilliant Friend. I thought it would be kind of fun actually to read My Brilliant Friend again and watch the television show, which I have never seen. But I really enjoyed these books, as so many other people have. And I have an Elena Ferrante as an option for my pile of possibilities as well, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. So, the Neapolitan novels tells the story of a friendship between Elena and Lila. And it's both a rivalry and a friendship, and they go through a lot of spans all of their lives. It's a very popular set of books. And actually, I haven't watched it yet, but I noticed that Monica made a video about the mystery of who actually wrote these books, which I've been meaning to get to, Monica. Elena Ferrante is actually a pseudonym for an Italian novelist, and we don't know who that person is. So yeah, there's that mystery. Okay, and the last book that I'm going to recommend, and I'm ballsy here recommending this because I'm not finished it yet. I've started it though. This is the book Our Share of Night, which you all voted on when I asked what book I should read for my TBR back at the beginning of this month. Actually, between the Instagram poll and the BookTube leave an emoji poll, this was the winner. The birthday party was a close second, and it's still on my radar potentially for August. But so far, I got to tell you guys that this is really good. This is I don't know if it's my highest recommendation because these books are all very different, but this is so good. It's about the occult, and it's about a medium and his son, and the need to protect the son from other members of the family who are part of the cult. And that's as far as I've gotten so far. But already we've had sacrifices, we've had rituals and sacrifices, and a lot of setting up, because I'm in the beginning of the book, a lot of setup for potentially a big showdown. So I will be talking about this more when I finish it, obviously, but I feel confident in recommending Our Share of Night if that's your thing. And I am actually considering, because I did want to read her short stories. Like, one of my goals for this year was to read her short stories. So I am considering reading her short stories as part of Women in Translation Month, the dangers of smoking in bed. So this is my transition into my pile of possibilities. So yeah, definitely recommend Mariana Enriquez. I have been loving this book. It's been so good. And it's just, you can see the size of it. It's nice and thick, and you can just get really immersed in it. And I'm falling down the rabbit hole of Gaspar and Juan and Talia and all the characters of this book, and I'm loving it. So if you pick up one, maybe this should be the one. So now I'm going to get into my pile of possibilities. I have been enjoying Our Share of Night so much that I'm considering reading Mariana Enriquez's short stories. I'd already heard really good things about this set of short stories, and I had been hoping to read them in the fall last year, but just didn't get to them. So given how much I'm enjoying Our Share of Night, I might just crack on with this set of short stories. A lot of the books I'm going to talk about are actually from authors that I've read before. There's a couple of new ones as well. Riku Onda has another book that I've been playing with, putting on different TBRs at different times. I've already put it on a TBR this year once and didn't get to it. This is Fish Swimming in Dappled Sunlight, and it's about two hikers who go on a hike and someone is murdered. They're on a mountain trek and their guide dies unexpectedly, and I think it's one of those books where they don't trust one another. So I'm definitely curious, and I am participating in the Women's World Cup reading challenge, and my team Zambia is playing, I think they're playing today, actually. They're playing Japan. And if they lose to Japan, then I have to read a Japanese author's book, and so that would fit very nicely. The other book, which I might read as a Japanese author whose book I've already spoken about, is Mieko Kawakami. I picked this up, actually. I haven't done my book haul, but I picked this up recently and bought it for myself, thinking that I might read it if I ended up needing to find something from a Japanese author. And it's called All Lovers in the Night, and it just sounds really wonderful. It's about a freelance copy editor in her 30s, and she's working and living alone in the city. She sees a reflection of her, this is just what I know of it, she sees a reflection of herself in the window and is considering, you know, her life, and I don't know about if she's considering the meaning of life, but just considering her life and who she is. And she wants to make changes, and it's just a story about how she comes around to being able or not being able to make those changes in her life. And I just, because I enjoyed Breasts and Eggs so much, I thought that this would be a great choice for me. Anyway, this could be the one. They could all be the one. So also another possibility is Elena Ferrante's The Days of Abandonment, which I have on my shelf but have never read. I don't know if this is the one that Charlotte recommended or not. This one sounds good. Apparently it's very shocking because of its depiction of motherhood, marriage, and solitude. It says that it tells the story of one woman's headlong descent into what she calls an absence of sense after being abandoned by her husband. Oh, actually sounds really sad. I'm not sure if I'll be in the mood for this one. Let me know in the comments below if you read this one and what you thought of it if you read it. Of others that I'm thinking about, Tender is the Flesh, which I talked about during my college reading vlog. I just picked this one up, and I think I just saw Shelley talking about this in a book haul recently, because I think she said Jennifer Loves Books recommended it, if I got that right. But I had heard about it from Scott, and this book is, I think it's a political commentary, but it's about cannibalism as well, and it's not very long, so I thought that this would be a really, just based on the recommendations and based on the topic, it sounds really good, and I think that I would like it. So I thought about adding that to my TBR. The Twilight Zone by Nona Fernandez. This sounds so interesting. This is set in Chile in 1984 during the Pinochet dictatorship, and it just sounds really, really interesting. And I think the narrator is telling the story looking back at that time, and but it's about that time, and it's about the experiences of people living under that regime. So that sounds really good. Described as being mesmerizing. I'll just read this little bit because I think this is what really captured my attention. It says, with this mesmerizing novel, Nona Fernandez shows that the work of the writer in the face of historical erasure is to imagine so deeply that such absences can be for a time spectacularly illuminated. It just sounds so good, so I really want to get to that one. And I do think that I read a lot of translation anyway. The one that I wanted to read last year at this time, which I did not get to, which got a lot of attention last year at this time, and which I've talked about in a number of different videos, is Claudio Pinero's Elena Knows. And I remember a commenter telling me that I didn't have the right idea about this story, that I thought it was a mystery, but it turns out it's not. So I don't quite know what to expect from this book, but I'd heard so many people talking about it that I'm curious about it. It does say that when Rita's body is found hanging in the belfry of the church, she devoted herself to the investigation is swiftly closed. But her mother, Elena, refuses to accept the police's version of what happened. So I'm sure maybe it's about grief. It could be about other things that I'm unaware of, but I'm still curious, and I still may end up reading this one. I'm not going to ask you guys to vote because there's just too many to choose from, and I might read more than one. We'll see where the mood hits me. And then the last two that I'm going to talk about, because this video is already getting pretty long, is Isabel Allende's A Long Petal of the Sea. So this is the book that I said at the beginning of the video that Charlotte had recommended on her video, and I just listened to an interview with Isabel Allende for Julia Dreyfus's new podcast, and it was really good. If you haven't heard about that podcast, I'll leave a link in the description box below. Forget the name of it, but her interview with her was brilliant. It was really good. And I mean, she's very prolific. In that interview, she talked about writing 48 novels or something. So, and I think, well, this is the only one that I have. So I think viewers have recommended other books by Isabel Allende for me, but I think just because this is the only one that I own, this is the one that I would probably read if I choose to. Highly recommended by so many different people. And this one is about the Spanish Civil War, I think. Yeah. So maybe I will choose this one. Maybe I will get to this one. And then the last one, which I think I actually am going to read because I'm trying to convince Kat to do a buddy read of this one with me. And I should have talked about Fever Dream in my list of recommendations, but it just slipped my mind. So that would be Little Eyes by Samantha Schweblin. So I read Fever Dream actually this year, and I'll leave a link to the video below where I talk about it. It was really interesting. It was written as if you were having a fever dream. So that's another book that you could read for Women in Translation Month. But this one is about, it's kind of Big Brother-esque, I think. It's just, I don't know if it's dystopian. I don't even really know. I get the sense though with the title, little eyes and all the eyes over all the title. It says they've infiltrated homes in Hong Kong, shops in Vancouver, the streets of Sierra Leone. They're everywhere. But how can a person living in Berlin walk freely through the living room of someone in Sydney? So that's the vibe. And the last book that I read by her, Fever Dream, was really creepy. It was a really creepy book. So I'm hoping that it's good, and I'm hoping that Kat's up for the buddy read. That's my pile of possibilities. If you have other recommendations or suggestions, I don't own any other books in translation, I don't think, that aren't wrapped in my wrapped TBR. I think, and I would really also like to read, there are two other authors that I'd kind of like to get to. One is Annie Ernaux, but I've been having trouble finding Annie Ernaux books here in Montreal, and I don't want to spend a ton of money placing another order. So there's that. I could read her in French though here. And then the other one, oh, I have Hurricane, but I think it's wrapped in my wrapped TBR. So that one's about witches. So there's so many great books out there that are translated works, and there's so much work on the part of translators to translate these books that I think it's really wonderful that there's a whole month devoted to reading women in translation. And just reading in translation in general, I have found absolutely gives me so much. It's such a rich experience to read from other cultures, other countries. I wish I could speak at least 12 different languages, because if I could speak at least 12 different languages, then I could read all their books, all these books in their original language. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and thank you so much for those of you that voted. I noticed that, what, 30 people voted? So what's my percentage? What's my rate there? 30 on 433 subscribers. What's that? That's almost a 7% return rate. That's almost a 7% answer rate. What is that called in statistics? Anyway, I felt pretty good about that. Thank you so much for voting on that post. It helped me to decide what to film today, and it made it more enjoyable actually for me to make this video, knowing that people wanted to see it. So thanks again to Charlotte for coming up with the idea, and thanks again to those of you that voted for me to do it. So please let me know in the comments below which ones you think I should read from my pile of possibilities, and if you've read any of these. Any comments are always welcome. And if you made it to the end of this video, what should we use for women in translation? But you could leave a flag of, like, you know, one of the countries that I mentioned if you made it to the end of this video. I love doing stuff like that. I'm a teacher. Everything's always a test. Everything's interactive, right? So yeah, leave a flag at the end of this video if you stay till the end. Bye. It's a wonderful book. I really enjoyed it. It's fun. And yeah, I just remember really enjoying this book. It's making me think of another book, actually. And now I need to go back and watch Charlotte's video and see if she recommended that one. I don't think this is the one she recommended. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. The other author that I was thinking about, oh, who was the other author?